What is your party going to do to advance anything other than hatred for Donald Trump? I didn't see it.
The only time mass protests really made a difference in this country is when you had higher levels of unionized workers who were able to organize and essentially have a plan in place that goes beyond simply gathering, protesting, and then going home. And so, look, even when it comes to the right, I remember when the right was protesting some of the COVID-related lockdown.
In today's video, Anna Kasparian destroys Tomi Lahren on the Tomi Lahren podcast. In this heated clash, Anna Kasparian goes off, completely dismantling MAGA arguments over the No Kings protests and Trump's so-called legacy. As Tomi Lahren defends conservative policies, Anna Kasparian fires back with facts, calling out hypocrisy on freedom, immigration, and government accountability. The tension explodes as they tackle homelessness, crime, and corruption, showing just how divided America's politics have become. This isn't just a debate, it's a political showdown. So let's dive in and watch how Anna Kasparian shuts down Tomi Lahren on the Tomi Lahren podcast.
And I think it's great that President Trump trolled you with memes and with videos. Many of you are calling for his death and celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So yeah, memes are what you deserve, quite frankly. I love it. But in the spirit of Charlie Kirk and the desire to learn, to grow, and to discuss, it is Liberal Tuesday, and you know what that means. Joining me now is host and executive producer of The Young Turks, Anna Kasparian, who, by the way, I've really enjoyed all of our conversations we've had over the last several years. And I know that you've slightly changed some of your perspectives on things, but I don't know if you were a No King supporter or not. And I didn't want to look specifically because I wanted to be surprised. So you have to break it down for me.
I'm indifferent. I don't feel one way or the other about it. I just kind of saw it as a little bit of a fruitless effort because there wasn't a specific ask. It was more, in my opinion, a way for liberals to kind of get together and express their disagreements, various disagreements with the Trump administration. For me, I think obviously protecting the right to assemble is important, even if I don't necessarily fully support the protest. In this case, it's not that I don't support it. If I'm going to go out and engage, I want to make sure that there's like a real ask and a real organized strategy in place, as opposed to just kind of getting together and airing grievances. That being said, airing grievances, I think, is valuable. People going out there and protesting whatever issues they have with the government, whether it's state and local or federal, is important. And yeah, I was fine with it. I don't really care. As long as there aren't riots happening, as long as people aren't getting hurt, I don't really care.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing too. I mean, they're more than welcome to go and do it. I just think for me, this just falls so flat for the Democrat Party. I think they're waiting to end the shutdown because they wanted to make a point with these No Kings protests. And I don't know how long they'll hold on to this. I think they're probably desperately looking for some kind of an off-ramp right now, and they wanted to wait and let this breathe. But we've seen people assemble and do this so many times over the Trump presidencies. And I don't really know, other than getting out a big crowd of people, I don't know what it accomplishes, and I don't know what the message is. And when you see the interviews, and I understand that some of the interviews are meant to be making fun or poking fun at protesters, but when you see the interviews and you see independent journalists out there saying, like, why are you upset or what are you protesting? I didn't see many folks that had a clear, concise answer. It was just, I don't like Donald Trump. Like, we get that, but what is your party going to do to advance anything other than hatred for Donald Trump? I didn't see it.
The only time mass protests really made a difference in this country is when you had higher levels of unionized workers who were able to organize and essentially have a plan in place that goes beyond simply gathering, protesting, and then going home. And so, look, even when it comes to the right, I remember when the right was protesting some of the COVID-related lockdowns. In some red states, sure, they lifted lockdowns, but on a federal level, a lot of what they were protesting remained in place. You can't really push through policies that you want, whether you're on the left or the right, unless you have a well-planned, organized effort to do it. That being said, I want to note that various people who are part of the No Kings protests. I have watched those interviews, by the way. Some of them, yes, I think, intentionally seek out some of the more wacky individuals who attended in order to kind of make a comment about the platform's disdain for the, protest in general. But if you listen to some of the substantive interviews that took place, people did have legitimate concerns.
You can really sense the ideological tension here. Anna Kasparian bringing nuance and context, while Tomi Lahren goes for that quick headline-driven outrage. What Anna's saying actually touches on something deeper about how modern activism has evolved. Protests like No Kings might look messy or unfocused, but historically, movements often start that way. Raw emotion, frustration, and a shared sense of injustice. That's how momentum builds before structure follows. Anna's point about organization is spot on. Look at the labor movements of the 1930s or even the early environmental protests of the 1970s. They began as scattered rallies, but because people showed up consistently, they turned into political power. That's the piece Tomi misses. She frames everything as optics, but activism isn't about instant results. It's about laying groundwork. And beyond that, Anna's right that protest serves as a social temperature check. Even without one unified demand, it forces politicians to confront public sentiment, to realize people care. And when that sentiment gets ignored, that's when things escalate. So yeah, while Tommy's laughing at liberals with signs, Anna's pointing out the uncomfortable truth. Democracy isn't just about voting every 4 years. It's about showing up, speaking out, and pushing leaders to listen, even when it makes people like Tomi uncomfortable.
And in fact, some of those concerns are starting to be shared by some on the right as well. We did a story yesterday on TYT about how, with this massive infusion of taxpayer money going to ICE, basically the administration is looking to expand ICE's roles within the United States to go beyond simple immigration enforcement. So one of the things they want to do is start putting together groups of agents that monitor the social media of Americans, of everyone in the country 24/7 for national security risks. Now, obviously, that brings up issues with privacy and, certain freedoms that Americans enjoy essentially being violated, which is why for the first time you're seeing some on the right, express concern about the policy. And I'm happy to see that, because I do think there's a possibility for the government to become too intrusive into the personal lives of Americans. And I don't think it's really in the jurisdiction of ICE agents to be monitoring American citizens.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that if that's in fact the plan. I haven't necessarily heard that, but I take you at your word. I guess I would say ICE agents have plenty to do. We've got millions and millions and millions of illegal aliens in this country. So, even as quickly as they're working now, they've got plenty to do to carry out immigration enforcement. I'm with you, though, on the free speech stuff. I didn't even like it after, of course, the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. I didn't like some of the things that our, AG Pam Bondi said about, we're going to be targeting people with that say hate speech and all that. I didn't like that either, because I think that that's too far. But I will say, aside from it being protected speech, I do want to play just some video. This is getting a lot of attention, and I realize that this might be a fringe person, but this person's also reportedly a school teacher who's mocking the assassination of Charlie Kirk, pointing to her neck. And, this video has gone viral for good reason. I understand that that's not representative of everybody that showed up at the No Kings protest, but I don't know. Right now, I think the left, the burden of proof is on them to show the American people that they don't condone this. And with them refusing to ask Jay Jones to drop out in Virginia, it just feels like maybe they're not doing enough when it comes to behavior like this.
Jay Jones should drop out in Virginia. And I'm saying that with my whole chest. I'll get back to the crazy lady mocking an assassination in a second. But calling for the death of the children of your political opponents is absolutely abhorrent and disgusting. And I'm sorry, but you can't, on one hand, it doesn't matter what political side you're on. And honestly, I've kind of transcended past seeing politics as one side or the other. I think there are a lot of areas where the left and the right, and I'm talking about the electorate, can find commonalities to work together. And that's what I really want to focus on.
You know, watching this debate between Anna Kasparian and Tomi Lahren, I've got to say, Anna's raising a serious issue that doesn't get enough attention. When government agencies like ICE start expanding their authority to monitor American citizens' social media, that's not just about immigration anymore. That's about mass surveillance. And history shows what happens when that goes unchecked. Remember the Patriot Act. It started as a tool against terrorism, and it ended up being used to spy on everyday Americans. Anna's point about privacy and civil liberties is dead on. Once an agency gains new surveillance powers, they rarely give them up. Even people on the right, like Rand Paul or Justin Amash, have warned about this kind of government overreach. So this isn't just a left-wing concern, it's a constitutional one. Meanwhile, Tommy's talking about law and order, but you can't have real law and order without accountability. ICE has already detained US citizens by mistake, and if agents start monitoring online speech, imagine how many more innocent people could get caught up in that system. Anna's basically saying, hey, this crosses the line of what freedom means in America, and she's right. When surveillance replaces safety, we all lose.
But if you still see American politics through the lens of left versus right, you can't be someone on the left who argues that the individuals within that young conservatives movement that got, their Signal chat leaked, all of them should lose their jobs, all of them should resign. But when it comes to Jones, oh, it's totally fine. It's not a big deal. It was a private conversation. No. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And for me, I do think that people are capable of evolving, and I do not like going back to texts or tweets or anything from like a decade ago to judge who someone is today. That being said, that text exchange wasn't that long ago, and I draw a very clear red line when it comes to wishing death upon people, especially children.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And I would also say that I think that those text messages, the young Republicans, I get it that they're young people, and sometimes young people say stupid things that they don't actually believe for shock value to one another. But I thought it was disgusting, and I thought it should have been more condemned. I was actually a little bit disappointed that our vice president didn't condemn it more. I think he said, obviously Jay Jones is worse. And I think that Jay Jones, being somebody who's running for office to be the highest law enforcement officer in the land in Virginia, I think that there should be more weight put there than a stupid group chat. But I also think that that was disgusting, and I don't want that representative of my side or my movement at all, especially when there are so many great young conservatives out there that are in Turning Point USA chapters and other movements that are peaceful and respectful. So I appreciate that you and I agree on that. I also want to talk about Zoran Mamdani, and I don't know how you feel about him, but there's some concerning things here. And I watched the debate last week, and looking at it from someone's perspective who doesn't, I tried to look at it as somebody who lived in New York that wasn't as read into all of his past as I am. And I thought, wow, this guy is dangerous because he sure sounded good. And I think people listening to it that are frustrated about affordability and other things, I think they would have listened to him and said, he's not so bad. And I think he is that bad, though. So I'm wondering your take on his performance and if you would like to see him win the race in New York.
Well, when you look at the contenders, I would never vote for Cuomo in a million years. And Sliwa doesn't appear to have a chance. So, and out of the three, I do think that Mamdani would be the better, candidate, a better mayor. I'm curious what you don't like about him, because it really depends on who you're talking to. And when it comes to the political establishments, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans, by the way, they seem to have a lot of hate toward him because of the fact that he hasn't expressed fealty to Israel, which as a mayoral candidate, I don't even know why that's something that's even being asked of him or any mayoral candidate. But if you have issues with particular policy proposals, I'm super curious which ones, because I actually think some of his policy proposals are a little shaky. And I'm wondering if we have similarities there.
Anna Kasparian really nails it here. because what she's pointing out isn't just about Jay Jones or one isolated incident. It's about consistency and accountability across the political spectrum. When people on the left condemn hate speech or violent rhetoric from conservatives, they've got to hold their own side to the same standard. And that's exactly what Anna's doing. She's not defending the indefensible. She's calling it out, no matter who says it. And honestly, this double standard problem goes way deeper than one race in Virginia. Pew Research found that over 70% of Americans believe both parties excuse bad behavior from their own side, and that's killing trust in politics altogether. Anna's push for consistency is the only way forward if we ever want people to take moral arguments seriously. Again, then on the point about Zoran Mamdani, Anna's right to question why local candidates are being pressed about foreign policy litmus tests like Israel. That's not even relevant to running a US city. What matters are things like affordability, housing, and infrastructure, the actual issues New Yorkers live with every day. Anna's approach here shows that you can be progressive and principled, willing to call out hypocrisy while keeping the focus on real governance, not political theater. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.